Welcome everybody to this IFA roundtable, and thank you for your attendance. These roundtables for us are really a way to delve into some of the deeper issues that are facing the financial planning profession and some of the issues facing Australian investors in a bit of a deeper format that goes beyond the headline. It can be very difficult for us as media providers in this day and age to really deal with some of the deeper issues. And so today we're really hoping to get some meaningful discourse out of this and possibly even some practical solutions to some of the issues that we face. So in partnership with MLC, today we're going to look at a topic which is very dear to their heart, which is saving the retirement of Australians. And we'll deep dive into the related issues of longevity risk and wealth protection. But before we get going, I want to share with you some research which MLC and Investment Trends have put out today, off the back of a wide-ranging survey of Australians aged over 40. So among a number of findings, the 2014 Retirement Income Report has found that the average retirement savings gap is as much as $150,000, with people underestimating how long they're going to be in retirement by up to 7 years. In addition, only 10% have a plan to beat longevity risk. So Katie, if I could start with you, do those figures surprise you?
No, they don't, and that's for a couple of reasons. Number one, people don't understand how long people are currently living for in Australia. So the oldest Australian right now is 112 years old, and the issue is not so much that our lifespans are increasing, but that the number of people who are living up to that maximum age is increasing, and that's the issue for longevity. People underestimate how long they're going to live for. So if you're a 65-year-old couple retiring right now, there's a 50% chance at least one of you will be alive at 95. So every retiree couple should have, if at 65, they should have a 30-year planning horizon. But on the other side of that, people intend generally to, and that's what the Investment Trends report found, people intend to retire at 64, but the average person retiring at the moment is 59. And one of the reasons that happens is because they are sick, or they either can't find a job, or they are sick or have to care for someone who is sick. So they actually have to go out of the workforce involuntary. And so they lose that income they lose basically 6 years of earned income before they retire. So that's one of the key reasons that they underestimate how long they're going to spend in retirement.
And to you guys on the client-facing side, I mean, is it surprising? Do your clients underestimate how long they're going to be in retirement?
I don't know so much they underestimate how long they're going to be in retirement. It's just they've never done the calculation and in fact have no means of doing the calculation. And when you do the calculation, that's when you discover most people have a problem.
I think they've just got no concept of, they don't want to think about their death when they're retiring. A lot of people don't want to go, oh, well, I'm retired now, I'm probably going to die at this particular time. And so they just hope that everything's going to fall into place. But they have, my experience is they have an idea that they'll live for about 20 years. That's the sort of feeling amongst my clients, that they'll live for 20 years. And when I explain to them that likely that they'll live 10 or 20 years further than that, they're quite shocked.
I think it's a classic baby boomer gig, where they're, we've gone through each of the life stages, and it's almost like a shock that you get to another life stage, and 40, 50, all those sorts of things. I, for one, I think most of the baby boomers I know still think of ourselves as a teenager, and kind of there's a part of us that still thinks like that, and therefore it's a huge shock to sort of, oh gee, I've gone 50, oh I've gone 60, oh retirement. Retirement is almost never now a single day. Yeah. It's virtually never. I almost can't think of a single client where that's how it's played out. It's always a transition now.
Yeah, that whole notion of, one day you're going to retire, which means you have your final day at work, there's a big afternoon tea, maybe you get a gold watch thanking you for your service, and then all of a sudden the next day it's, you're in with the caravan and cruising around Australia.
There is often that day, but that day often occurs when you're 45 or 49 or 54, right. And then you haven't got enough money, and you're then in the world of trying to get consulting gigs or kind of jobs on less pay or whatever, because it's tough to get back in quite often on that same salary. So that's the other big issue for, when I'm seeing clients who are sort of late 40s, early 50s, is we can extrapolate based on your current income through to whenever you think you might not like to hang your shingle up, but A, their health, which is, come back to insurance, and B, will the economy and will their, employer, will they allow them to keep working at that income right through to when the numbers say they're going to need to.
When a client comes into your office and asks you that question, that initial question, how much am I going to need in retirement, how soon after that do you bring up the issue of wealth protection and insurance? Are they inextricably linked?
Part of the issue, especially for someone who's younger, is you are the asset.
Yeah.
You're the asset here. You know, how many people willingly don't go and insure their house and just hope that everything will be okay? But here you've got the major asset, actually a more significant asset than your house, whichever amount that is, because if you're living in a $2 million house, you're probably getting paid, you know, $500,000. And if you lose the earning capacity of that for 10 years, there's $5 million gone. So to explain it in, again, simple terms and say, well, what have you done to protect this asset? And people, again, it's stuff they don't want to think about. And, you know, you don't want to shock people unnecessarily, but I think it's our role is to educate them about the realities of, you know, what happens if you cannot work, who takes, you know, responsibility for your payments, etc. And I think insurance is a vital part of that.
It's also important in the planning part, because you've got to highlight to people that the overall plan is no good if something happens to you.
Yeah.
So you can plan for a retirement, a savings goal, whatever, but all of that is impacted if something actually happens to you or your partner along the way. So the plan is no good, and all the money you're going to spend on putting it together or trying to, make it work, if you can't work for any disability, sickness, accident, whatever, then the plan's shot, and you're going to have to, on top of all the medical expenses, you're going to have to rework the plan. So you may as well add that level of protection in there, to ensure that the plan does have some longevity. It's not something that, is a day-to-day thing.
I reckon that's a really good point, because in a way, it's in the latter years as you're leading up to retirement that the shock of injury or illness, which then means that you're off work and you need to dip into what's essentially your retirement plan, the impacts of that can be quite catastrophic. If you're young, if you're 25 and you have an injury or illness which means you're off work for a year, by no means it's not great, but at least you've got time to recover up until the point at which you retire into the future. We see that all the time. There's this transition between protecting your most important asset, which is in accumulation, is your ability to earn income. You're exactly right, Vince. And then there's this transition at retirement when it's no longer your ability to earn an income through personal exertion that's most important. It's actually this nest egg that you've built up, and the income stream that you're drawing from that. That's the most important part of protection once you're retired.
The big issue with insurance is you have to get to people and get them insured before they're more as 40, because the simple truth is what costs you $2,000 a year when you're even 40 is going to cost you over $60,000 a year on just risk step premiums, and therefore if anyone's going to keep their insurance into their late 50s and early 60s and be able to afford it, they have to be on level premiums at a much younger age when it is actually affordable. If you get to someone pretty much after 40, A, they're almost certainly going to have health problems, which means you'll have exclusions and loadings that again causes you further problems, and B, your starting premium is already reaching an unaffordable point. So this whole what really scares me about this risk commission debate thing is and also the issues in the media about financial advisors is, if that's keeping away the kids and sort of young people in the workforce from just getting their insurance in place, then that's going to be a massive disaster.
Katie, in terms of retirement solutions, there's an interesting point there in superannuation. Do you think the insurance focus can often be too much on trauma or parts of protection like that, as opposed to superannuation and protecting your super?
There does come a point where it's important to change that portfolio mix of insurance. So one of the key things that most planners would see is when your clients start getting to 50, and if they've been on stepped premium, do they keep on insuring? No, they've still got those bills to pay, and even though the reason those premiums go up is because the likelihood of you claiming on that goes to the roof, and you see more and more clients choose not to take out protection, income protection or trauma insurance, because they just think they can self-insure. They've got the $500,000 in superannuation. They've nearly paid off their house. She'll be right. And there's a few things that they're relying on there. They feel 10 foot tall and bulletproof, but there's actually a few things that they're mistaken in their beliefs of how sure they are. And one of them is their super balance. If they've got $500,000, they feel wealthy, and they're inadvertently biased, that feeling of, well, if the market goes down and they need to claim, or if they would have been able to claim due to sickness or injury, they're out of the workforce for a year, that has a significant impact on what's going to happen for their income for the rest of their life. So at that point, there's a few things that that we suggest. One is definitely review your insurances, and if it's becoming, you might think that it's becoming too expensive, but really understand the value of the insurance that you've got, because once you give it up, to your point, the chances of you getting it back again are very low. But also think of changing that portfolio mix. If your second biggest asset at that point is going to be your superannuation, so have a think about insuring that. And by insuring that, I mean there's lots of ways now that you can still stay in growth in your superannuation and go for growth, and make sure though that balance is protected so that it can't go down in value over a 10-year period.
We've spoken about the importance of insurance, wealth protection in mitigating longevity risk. What are some of the other strategies that you guys employ with your clients?
The main option I use for my clients now is income protection. For most of them 20 years, regardless of age. Because there's a sweet point in the cost benefit that I find of virtually 0.5% on a balanced fund. They can get 20 years of protection, guaranteed 5%. And basically they're getting their money back. 5% over 20 years is...
Worst case scenario.
Worst case, Katie, is that they get their money back. But they need to understand that that's the worst case. And they say, well, hold on, that doesn't seem such a good deal just to get my money back. But then I say, well, what if we had another GFC? Because for a lot of the clients I'm having these conversations with, they're very well aware of what happened during the GFC. So do you want a situation where what happens during a GFC, loss of that capital, taking twice as long to recover, etc. Or would you like the idea that at least we know for the next 20 years that you're guaranteed at getting 5%, and you've got the benefit if the market goes up, you're going to get 5% of the higher figure. So I've had a number of clients who've taken up that option.
What are the sort of challenges that you face when you're having that sort of conversation with clients?
The challenge, I suppose, is to justify the cost, But as I said, at 0.5%, with an option that they can cancel at any stage without cost. So what I've said to them, guess what? I'm not sure what's going to happen in the next 3 years. I've got no idea. I'm not one of the gurus who will predict what's going to happen in the market. And just say the worst possible thing happened in the next few years, right? And we had a 50% fall in the market. I couldn't look you in the face and explain that that's what's happened to your money when I had this option sitting on the shelf. So in fact, when this became available with MLC, I wrote to every client and said, this is available, because I actually saw it as a business risk for me if I didn't explain it.
Just to explain that a little more, so with this, so it's insurance, it's wealth insurance effectively, and like any form of insurance, you never want the circumstances to occur for it to pay out. I've got car insurance, I've got trauma insurance. I never want those things to actually have to pay me. I don't want those events to occur, and it's similar in this scenario. But what the insurance does is you put it over a portion of your portfolio, and on every policy anniversary, if the money's gone up, whatever you've invested in has gone up, we lock in the guarantee at that higher rate. So it means that you can have a conversation throughout your accumulation phase, knowing exactly what your worst case scenario for income is going to be once you turn that income on when you're in pension phase. So it's quite powerful for clients in that circumstance.